Good morning and welcome to Joe Stunner Boxing again. One of my subscribers, a guy by the name of Darius, asked me if I'd comment on the David Morrell SENA AGBEKO fight that's coming up actually later today. Now, I should have done a preview video for this, but I just never got around to it. And the reason I'm going to do a preview now, even though it's only hours away from the fight itself, but the reason I should have done a preview video is because I rate David Morrell extremely highly, extremely highly. How highly do I rate him? I would pick him to beat David Benavidez or Canelo Alvarez at this point of Canelo's career. And I know a lot of you are going to say, what on earth are you talking about? This is a guy with 9 fights, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And a lot of your arguments would be probably, valid. But I just get the vibe from having seen a lot of David Morrell that this guy is extremely special. I could be wrong. I've predicted fighters in the past who have got, glowing futures and they failed for one reason or another. But with David Morrell, I really think he's an absolute superstar and potential pound for pound #1 in the making. So why do I think that? Well, even though he's only had 9 fights, 8 are by KO, and considering, that limited amount of fights, the manner in which he's got his work done and the quality of the opposition is extremely good. Morrell is 25 years old as well, so he's got all the time in the world to get even better. Although it should be added that some people mature early, which is fair enough. He's from Cuba. We're talking super-middleweight here. He's a southpaw, 6'1" in height, nice height for the weight, and he uses his attributes, of which there are many, very, very impressively. Now, if we look back at his career, there isn't much to look back on because he hasn't had many fights. I mean, he actually turned pro in 2019, which is, 4 years ago. 9 fights in 4 years. 4 years, it's not that much. He turned pro with a first-round knockout. In only his 3rd fight, he took on Lennox Allen, who at the time was 22 wins, no defeats and 1 draw, 14 KOs. Lennox Allen is from Guyana. He was handed his first defeat over 12 rounds for the WBA interim title, whatever the hell that is. I mean, I'm not even going to get into the whole alphabet soup ruling bodies crap because I've just had enough of them, all right, and all their stupid secondary belts. But it was for the WBA belt. So in his 3rd fight, Morrell beat Lennox Allen by unanimous decision, and it was wide as well. So he took on a guy who at the time had, I think, 20 wins and no defeats and 1 draw, and he basically schooled him, okay? And interestingly, Lennox Allen has only fought once since, which was against Aidos Yerbosnuli from Kazakhstan, and got knocked out in 10 rounds. So I don't know whether Morrell is going to fall into that category of someone who, fighters are never the same after they fought him, quite possibly. Or it could be that Allen was never that great in the first place. You could make that argument as well. But for a guy to take on, in only his 3rd fight, an undefeated fella who's 20 or 22 wins, whatever it was, no defeats and 1 draw, was an achievement in itself by Morrell. And the manner in which he got his work done was fantastic. Again, very, very dominant, extremely skillful, and combining the skills with the power, which not every fighter can do. Trust me, David Morrell can do it. Go and have a look at him on YouTube if you're not familiar with him. In his 6th fight, he fought a decent gatekeeper called Atlanta's Fox, who you may have seen before, who at the time was 28 wins, 2 defeats and 1 draw, and he blew him away in 4 rounds. In fact, prior to that, he'd fought a guy called Mario Abel Cazares, who was 12 wins, no defeats, no draw, a Mexican. And we know that some of these Mexicans, even though they're not that well known, can give people trouble. Well, Mr. Cazares did not give David Morrell any trouble because he got blown away in the 1st round. and that was a defence of this WBA thing that Morrell holds. But he then fought, well, no, actually, I think it was a couple of fights later, in his last but one fight, he fought the aforementioned Aidos Yerbosnuli of Kazakhstan. And this was, Yerbosnuli was 16 wins, no defeats, no draws, 11 KOs. I think he's about 5'11", 6 foot, something like that. So he almost matched Morrell for height. And he fought, he was expected actually to give Morrell some serious problems. And a lot of people predicted he would win. He would be too much, too soon for Morrell. And that his swarming, extremely sort of violent attacks, frequent attacks, and great engine would be too much for Morrell. In actual fact, Morrell dominated him and knocked him out in the 12th and final round. And it was a bad knockout as well. I'm pretty certain Yerbosnuli suffered a serious injury, or at least he was hospitalised. He hasn't fought since. That fight was in November of last year. But the manner in which Morrell handled, like I say, a rampaging Kazakh warlord, it was impressive. It was just very, very impressive. Like I say, this kid's 25 years old and fights like he's been, well, he may well have been fighting all his life. He's got that Cuban sort of confidence. Nothing seems to faze him. Pressure don't faze him. A swarming style doesn't faze him. I mean, he's just very, very impressive. He looks so mature and cool in the ring that you just think this is a really very, very special fighter indeed. So that's David Morrell. Let's move on to SENA AGBEKO, who is originally from Ghana, Accra in Ghana, now based in Tennessee, in Nashville. 31 years of age, orthodox fighter. So you're going to have that clash of styles, the southpaw versus the orthodox fighter. Morrell being a southpaw. AGBEKO, 6 foot tall, so he's almost as tall as Morrell. You know, again, decent height for a super middle. And he's got 28 wins with 22 KOs, 2 defeats, one which was by stoppage 9 years ago to a decent fighter called Raymond Gattaca, who I had a look at, a few drips and drabs. He looked quite capable. That was an early defeat, like I say, 9 years ago. Since then, he's lost to Vladimir Shishkin in 2021. He lost a 10-round unanimous decision, but it was wide, very, very wide. I think he won 1 or 2 rounds, and that was his lot. But nevertheless, he has fought some half-decent people. And in fact, 2 fights ago, in October of 2022, he took on a guy called Isaiah Steen. Now, I remember watching this. I think it was one of those Showtime Showbox things. And it was a good fight, a very, very good fight to watch, because both Mr. Steen and Mr. AGBEKO were not going to take a backward step. So you got this sort of, you know, 2 rams locking horns and basically trying to out-muscle each other. And in actual fact, it was AGBEKO who came through with a very good, it was a close-ish anyway. I mean, I had it close. I thought it was 115, 130, something like that. No, 8, was it a 10-rounder? Yeah, it would have been. I had it something like 96, 94, something like that. I'm doing this off memory, so I may be wrong about that. But I remember it being close. And Steen at the time was undefeated. He had 16 wins, no draws, no defeats, 12 KOs, so he's got a bit of pop. But AGBEKO, at no point did was AGBEKO shaken by the power. And in fact, he just out-muscled Steen and out-fought him. And the one thing you noticed about AGBEKO in that fight is that he had tremendous stamina. He's got a very, very good engine. However, his style and the other fights I've seen of his, I mean, he fought Winfred Harris Jr., who was 22 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat, I think, and stopped him in 9 rounds. And Harris was a decent fighter if you've ever seen him. He can finish fights late, AGBEKO, through sheer attrition. He's an extremely like water on rock fighter, will wear you out, very good engine, but stylistically he does tend to slug. I wouldn't say he was completely without intelligence. There is some method to his madness. He doesn't just walk in the front door throwing punches, but he does like to put, unholy amounts of pressure on the opponent. And when he gets in close, like I say, try and erode them, basically. He does leave his left hand low, very low. And there are definite gaps in his defence, to put it mildly. Now, when you're facing someone like David Morrell, who is so well schooled, such a sharpshooter, and so relaxed in the ring, any gaps in your defence will be your possible downfall. Let's put it that way. Having said that, the way to fight Morrell, you're not going to outbox Morrell. I definitely think Agbeko has to be his natural self in there. Try and get close, and then try and unsettle Morrell and rough him up. Maybe even use a few of the dark arts. Not unlike the way that Yebosnuli tried it. Yebosnuli, like I say, got knocked out in the 12th round. Didn't really have a great deal of success at all. I mean, he was being he wasn't just being outboxed, he was being outfought at times by Morrell. But at the same time, I don't see how Agbeko can win any other way other than trying to do what he's good at, which is to put pressure on. But anyway, when all is said and done, with the skill set that Morrell has and his mentality, his confidence, his poise, I see him being able to control the physical strength and the aggression of Agbeko. That's not to say Agbeko won't have little pockets of success, 5-10 second little cameos of success during the rounds. But I expect Morrell to ride them out, to contain Agbeko, and to knock him out in about 4 or 5 rounds. I think Agbeko is a good fighter, a good B-level fighter, has some attributes, like I say, the stamina, the engine's great, very effective for fighters who cannot contain extreme pressure. But Morrell is not one of those fighters. He's someone who can definitely control the pace, the range of a fight. He doesn't mind if an opponent gets up close. He seems to have. I will almost go as far as to say he seems to have, been a boxer in a previous life, Morrell. If you know what I mean. I don't want to get carried away here, but as I say, I think he's the best super middleweight in the world right now. People talk about Benavidez against Canelo. The one that I want to see either of those in with is David Morrell. I rate him extremely highly. And although I can see attributes that SENA AGBEKO has, I honestly think Morrell will knock him out in about 4 or 5 rounds. So that's my prediction. If you've got any comments for this fight, don't miss this fight, because it could be. I just love watching Morrell fight. If you're not familiar with Morrell, and he's only had 9 pro fights, so he may have slipped through your net, have a look at him. He's extremely, extremely good. Let me know what you think. Comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, please. That helps us out greatly. And if you could also hit that thumbs up, like button, I'd appreciate it. I always appreciate your time. Looking forward to what you've got to say. I'll have a read of your comments and answer as many as I can. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.